You think you know Tennessee. Country music, the Smokies, maybe some good whiskey. But in 1945, one of its biggest cities didn't appear on a single map, held 75,000 people behind armed gates, and used more electricity than all of New York City. And that's not even the strangest thing hiding in this state, because the real Tennessee was never on the surface. It's underneath it. Most states have a story they tell about themselves, and it's usually the story on the postcard. Tennessee has that too. The rolling green hills, the neon of Broadway in Nashville, the smoke curling off the mountains at dawn. But that version of Tennessee is a costume. Underneath it sits something far stranger, and the deeper you dig, the weirder it gets. If you like seeing how geography and history hide these stories in plain sight, take a second to subscribe. It genuinely helps more than you'd think. Because here's what we're actually going to do. We're going to dig down through 3 layers of concealment. First, what's hidden underground, a whole second Tennessee you can't see from any road. Then, what was hidden from the map, erased on purpose by people who would go to prison if they talked. And finally, what's hidden in plain sight, sitting right there in the law books, so strange it sounds completely made up. 3 layers, each one stranger than the last. And by the end, the whole idea of Weird Tennessee is going to turn back around and point straight at you. Let's start with the ground itself, because in Tennessee, the ground can't be trusted. Stand anywhere in central or eastern Tennessee, and there's a decent chance you're standing on a lie. The land looks solid. It feels solid. It is not solid. Millions of years ago, a shallow sea covered this entire region. When it drained away, it left behind thick beds of limestone, and limestone has one fatal weakness. Water dissolves it. Slowly, patiently, over unimaginable stretches of time, rainwater soaked into the rock and ate it from the inside out. Drop by drop, the stone rotted away beneath the hills. There was nothing violent about it. No earthquake, no collapse, just water and time, the 2 most relentless forces on Earth, quietly carving out a hollow world 1 molecule at a time. What that left behind is astonishing. Tennessee sits on top of more than 10,000 documented caves, more than any other state in the country. And documented is the key word, because cavers and geologists agree the real number is far higher. New caves are found all the time. Some are barely big enough to crawl through. Others are cathedrals of stone, hundreds of feet across, that no human has ever fully explored. People still stumble onto brand new openings in their own backyards, on their own farmland, in ground their families have owned for 100 years. Think about what that means. Underneath the farms, the highways, the small towns and church steeples, there's a second geography, a hidden network of tunnels and chambers and rivers running through the dark. Most of it has never been mapped. Some of it has never been seen. The Tennessee you can walk across is just the roof of the Tennessee you can't. And that raises an obvious question. If the whole state is honeycombed like this, if the ground is riddled with thousands of hollow spaces, then what's sitting in the biggest hollow of them all? In 1905, a 13-year-old boy squeezed through a hole in the rock and found something that, more than a century later, still hasn't given up its secret. His name was Ben Sands, and he was exploring Craighead Caverns in eastern Tennessee, a cave system local people had known about for generations. Ben found a narrow opening most adults couldn't fit through, wriggled his way in, and dropped down into a room that had been sealed in darkness for who knows how long. Picture it for a second. A kid, alone, deep underground, holding a torch and a handful of mud balls, standing in a chamber no one had ever described. He started throwing the mud into the black to hear where it would land. It didn't land. It splashed. Ben was standing at the edge of a vast underground lake, water so still and so wide that his torchlight couldn't reach the far side. He hurled mud in every direction, and every throw ended in the same soft splash somewhere out in the dark. When he finally climbed back out and told people what he'd seen, most of them flat out didn't believe him. A giant lake, underground that a child had found by accident? It took years before anyone confirmed the scale of what that kid had stumbled into. Today it's called the Lost Sea, and it's officially the largest underground lake in the United States. It sits about 140 feet below the surface. The water holds a steady 58 degrees year-round, glassy and clear, dotted with delicate crystal formations the guides call cave flowers. You can take a boat out onto it right now. It's a genuine tourist attraction, calm and beautiful, and just a little bit eerie. That flat black water stretching off past where the lights can reach. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. In the 120 years since Ben Sands found it, divers have gone down into that lake again and again. They've used sonar. They've mapped what they could. They've pushed as far as human beings and their equipment can go, and no one has ever found where it ends. Every expedition finds more water. The visible lake is just one room. Beyond it, the flooded passages keep going, deeper and farther than anyone has been able to follow. We have satellites mapping the surface of Mars in high definition. We cannot tell you how big a lake is that sits 140 feet under Tennessee. It's still down there, still unmeasured, still refusing to answer the question a 13-year-old asked more than a century ago. That's what nature can hide, a whole sea tucked into the dark that we still can't get to the bottom of. But nature isn't the only thing that hides in this state. And what came next was hidden on purpose. A lake hidden underground is one thing. It got there by accident over millions of years with no one trying to keep it a secret. But Tennessee also hid something on the surface, in plain sight from the entire world, and this one was deliberate. In 1942, the federal government moved into a quiet stretch of land along the Clinch River in eastern Tennessee. They condemned roughly 59,000 acres. They gave the families living there, about 3,000 of them, farmers whose people had worked that soil for generations, just weeks to pack up everything they owned and leave. No explanation, no appeal, just fences going up and armed guards moving in. Imagine getting a notice on your door telling you the country needs your land. You can't know why, and you have to be gone by the end of the month. Whatever was being built there had a name straight out of a spy novel. They called it Site X. And then something almost impossible happened. A city grew out of nothing. In 3 years, that patch of condemned farmland went from 0 people to around 75,000. They built 10,000 houses, 90 dormitories, thousands of trailers and crude little prefab shelters called hutments, thrown up as fast as the workers arrived. The mud was legendary. Roads churned into swamp by constant construction, people losing shoes in it on the walk to work. By 1945, this place, Oak Ridge, was one of the 5 largest cities in the entire state of Tennessee, and officially, it was not there. It didn't appear on maps. It had no road signs pointing to it. The people who lived and worked inside the fences couldn't tell their own families where they were or what they were doing. Signs were posted everywhere with warnings like, "What you see here, what you do here, what you hear here, let it stay here." Talk about your work, even to your spouse, and you weren't just fired. You could go to prison. Some workers later said their own mothers had no idea where they disappeared to for years. Remember that electricity fact from the very beginning? This is it. Oak Ridge drew more power than New York City, an entire metropolis of lights and factories and people, all running around the clock, all pointed at a single purpose, and almost none of the people inside had any idea what that purpose actually was. They came for the paychecks. They stayed behind the wire, doing work they couldn't describe, in a city that didn't exist, waiting for a secret that only a handful of men at the top were allowed to know. So what were they actually building? Most of the 75,000 people inside Oak Ridge had no idea they were helping to build the most destructive weapon in human history. That was the whole design. The project was split into pieces so small and so compartmentalized that a worker could spend 2 years turning the same dial on the same machine and never learn what the machine was for. Young women, many of them fresh out of high school, monitored gauges for entire shifts, told only to keep the needle in a certain range and never ask why. Some of them were actually better at it than the trained scientists, precisely because they followed instructions instead of trying to understand the process. The genius of the secrecy was that you didn't need everyone to know the goal. You just needed everyone to do their small piece and keep their mouth shut. What they were really doing was enriching uranium. Oak Ridge was one of the key sites of the Manhattan Project, and the material coming out of those factories was destined for a single bomb, the one the crew of the Enola Gay would nickname Little Boy, the weapon dropped on Hiroshima in August of 1945. And here's the detail that stops me every time. Most of the workers found out what they'd built the same way the rest of the world did, from President Truman's announcement over the radio after the bomb had already fallen. They'd given years of their lives to it. They'd been threatened with prison to keep it quiet. And they learned the truth standing in their kitchens, listening to the news, realizing all at once what their small piece had been part of. Some felt pride, some felt sick. A lot of them felt both at the same time and never fully sorted it out. The Hidden City helped end the Second World War. It also opened the nuclear age, and it never really closed the door behind it. Oak Ridge is still there today, no longer a secret, now a real town with a national laboratory doing serious science and high-tech work. But it also left behind contaminated ground, cleanup projects that have run for decades, and a moral argument about the bomb that has never once been settled and probably never will be. That's the thing about a secret that big. Even after you tell it, it keeps costing you. So Tennessee hit a lake, and Tennessee hit a bomb. You'd think that's the ceiling for a state's weirdness. But some of the strangest things about this place were never hidden at all. Some of Tennessee's weirdest secrets are sitting right there in the law books, in plain sight, and they sound like somebody made them up. Start with this one. In Tennessee, it is perfectly legal to eat roadkill, as long as you're the one who hit it. This isn't a rumor, it's written into the state code. If you strike certain animals with your vehicle, you're allowed to take the meat home and eat it, provided you report it within a set window, in some cases within 48 hours. What started as a way to reduce waste became a genuinely useful law for a lot of rural families. Hit a deer on the highway, and dinner's handled. Then there's the dueling clause. Tennessee's constitution states that anyone who has taken part in a duel is barred from holding public office for the rest of their life. Not fined, not scolded. Banned permanently. That law is a fossil from an era when men actually settled disputes with pistols at dawn, and nobody's ever bothered to remove it. So technically, it's still on the books, waiting for a duelist who wants to run for mayor. Here's one that feels almost modern by comparison. Back in 2011, Tennessee was among the first states in the country to make it a crime to share a streaming password. The kind of thing where you hand a friend your login so they can watch on your account. Years before anyone was seriously arguing about it in Hollywood, Tennessee had already written it into law. And it keeps going. You can't import a skunk into the state unless you're a zoo or a research facility. So no pet skunks crossing the border. Meanwhile, a passenger is legally allowed to drink alcohol in a moving car, even though the driver obviously can't. Read those two back to back and you start to wonder who exactly was writing this stuff and what kind of week they were having. Every one of these is real. You can look them up. And that's what makes the next part so strange, because for every real law like these, there's a fake one spreading right alongside it. Here's the turn that flips this whole video on its head. Half the weird Tennessee laws you'll find online don't actually exist. You've probably seen the lists. It's illegal to carry ice cream in your back pocket. It's illegal for more than 8 women to live in the same house. They get shared and reshared as fun facts, presented as real statutes. But when journalists and legislative librarians, the people whose actual job is to know what's in the law, go looking for these laws, they can't find them. There's no code section, no record, nothing. They're ghosts, and it gets stranger. The people who track this stuff say new fake Tennessee laws appear online faster than anyone can debunk them. Someone invents an absurd statute, it sounds just plausible enough. It gets shared a few thousand times and suddenly it's a real Tennessee law that has never once been written down anywhere. Think about what that actually means. Tennessee's weirdness has become self-generating. The state is so associated with strange, backwoods, sounds, fake but might be true legends that the internet just keeps manufacturing more of them. The line between what's genuinely on the books and what someone made up on a Tuesday has blurred completely, and that blur is now part of the legend itself. You can't fully separate the real Tennessee from the invented one. The folklore writes its own sequels, which brings us right back to where we started. Look at everything we just dug through. A lake so vast that after 120 years, nobody has found where it ends. A city of 75,000 people that helped end a world war while officially not existing, whose true legacy people still argue about today. And a set of laws where half of them are real, half of them are invented, and even the experts can't always tell you which is which. There's a single thread running through all of it. Everything that actually defines Tennessee is the stuff you can't see at first glance. The postcard version, the music, the mountains, the whiskey, that's just the roof. The real state is underneath it, hidden on purpose or hidden by time, waiting for someone curious enough to look. And of all those hidden things, one is still genuinely unsolved. Right now, as you're watching this, 140 feet under the hills of eastern Tennessee, there's a lake nobody has ever reached the end of. Divers have tried for over a century. The water just keeps going into the dark. And it's still down there,